Close your eyes and think of the most iconic meal on the planet. Chances are you're picturing this: the hamburger. It is the undisputed king of the culinary world, a multi-billion-dollar industry, a symbol of American culture, and the ultimate comfort food found in nearly every corner of the globe. But here is the thing: almost everything you think you know about where it came from is wrong. If you ask a dozen different people who invented the hamburger, you'll get a dozen different answers. Was it a resourceful teenager at a county fair in Wisconsin? A pair of brothers in New York who ran out of pork sausage? Or does the trail lead back much further, across oceans and through centuries of warfare and migration? Today, we are stripping away the myths and the marketing fluff. We're going on a journey from the ancient battlefields of Central Asia to the industrial ports of 19th century Germany, and finally to the greasy spoons of the American Midwest. We're hunting for the patient zero of the patty. This isn't just a story about food. It's a story of global trade, technological breakthroughs, and a desperate search for a meal that could be eaten on the move. By the end of this, you'll realize that the hamburger wasn't just invented by one person in a single moment of inspiration. It was an evolution thousands of years in the making. To find the true ancestor of the burger, we have to look back much further than the 19th century. We have to go back to a time when the world was shaped by the thundering hooves of the Mongol Empire. In the 12th and 13th centuries, the fierce warriors of Genghis Khan were the most mobile military force the world had ever seen. They lived in the saddle, sometimes riding for days without ever stopping to set up a proper camp. Legend has it that these riders would place scraps of raw mutton or horse meat under their saddles as they rode. The constant friction and the weight of the rider would tenderize the meat, while the salt from the horse's sweat would effectively cure it. When they finally stopped to eat, they had a soft, protein-packed meal that required no fire and no fuss. Now, while the sweaty horse meat story is a favorite among food historians, modern research suggests it's a bit of a myth. The meat was likely used more to heal the horse's sores than to feed the rider. However, the core idea minced. Raw meat was very real. As the Mongol Golden Horde moved westward, they brought this culinary tradition to Russia. There, it evolved into what we now know as steak tartare. The Russians refined it, adding chopped onions and raw eggs, turning a survival ration into a delicacy. But the trail doesn't stop there. If we look even further back, to the 1st century AD, we find a shocking discovery in the world's oldest surviving cookbook, Apicius. The ancient Romans had a recipe for something called Isacia aumentata. Imagine this: minced meat mixed with crushed pine nuts, black pepper, and berries, flavored with wine and fish sauce, then formed into a patty and grilled. If you saw one today, you'd call it a gourmet slider. So, while America made the burger famous, the patty itself was already a classic before the Roman Empire even fell. As global trade routes expanded in the 17th and 18th centuries, the Russian tartare made its way to the German port of Hamburg. At the time, Hamburg was one of the busiest trading hubs in the world. It was the gateway between the heart of Europe and the vast Atlantic Ocean. In Hamburg, the local chefs took the concept of minced beef and gave it a German twist. They seasoned it with local spices, lightly smoked it, or sometimes grilled it. This became known as the Hamburg steak. This wasn't a sandwich yet. It was a high-quality, salted, and often smoked piece of beef that was prized because it stayed edible during long sea voyages. It was fast food for sailors and merchants. But something was about to change that would turn this regional specialty into a global phenomenon: the Industrial Revolution. Before the mid-1800s, if you wanted minced meat, a chef had to spend hours hand-chopping it with a heavy knife. This made the Hamburg steak a relatively expensive, labor-intensive dish. But then came the mechanical meat grinder. Suddenly, any cut of beef, even the tough, cheap bits, could be turned into a soft, palatable patty in seconds. This was the turning point. As millions of German immigrants began fleeing crop failures and political unrest for the New World, they brought their recipes and their meat grinders with them. When these immigrants arrived in New York City, they found a bustling metropolis of workers who needed to eat quickly and cheaply. Enterprising food cart vendors noticed that the German sailors were always asking for the steak in the Hamburg style. By the mid-1880s, Hamburg steak began appearing on menus across the United States, from the elite dining rooms of Delmonico's in New York to humble roadside stands in the Midwest. It was usually served as a plain patty on a plate with a side of potatoes. But there was still one glaring problem. Have you ever tried to eat a greasy, hot beef patty with your bare hands while walking down a crowded street? It's a disaster. The Hamburg steak was delicious, but it wasn't mobile. It was a meal that demanded a plate and a fork. And that brings us to the greatest mystery in food history. Who was the genius who finally put the meat between two slices of bread? Welcome to the Great Burger Debate. This is where history gets messy, because in the late 1800s, record-keeping was spotty, and everyone wanted a piece of the glory. There are at least 5 major claims to the invention of the hamburger sandwich, and each one has a dedicated following. Let's start in 1885, at the Outagamie County Fair in Seymour, Wisconsin. A 15-year-old boy named Charlie Negreen was struggling to sell his meatballs. Why? Because people wanted to walk around the fair and see the exhibits, and you can't exactly carry a plate of meatballs through a crowd. In a moment of pure teenage brilliance, Charlie took a meatball, smashed it flat, and stuck it between 2 slices of bread. He called it the Hamburger, named after the Hamburg steak his customers were familiar with. Hamburger Charlie became a local legend, selling his creation at the fair every year until his death in 1951. Wisconsin is so confident in this claim that the state legislature officially declared Seymour the home of the hamburger. But is it that simple? That same year, 1885, hundreds of miles away in Hamburg, New York, the Mench's brothers, Frank and Charles, were at the Erie County Fair. They were famous for their pork sausage sandwiches, but on one particularly hot day, the local butcher ran out of pork. He refused to slaughter more pigs in the heat, so he offered them ground beef instead. The brothers found the beef too bland, so they mixed it with coffee grounds, brown sugar, and other spices, grilled it, and put it on a bun. When a customer asked what it was called, they looked up at the banner for the Hamburg Fair and said, "This is the hamburger." 2 different stories, both in 1885, both involving fairs. Who do you believe? Before you decide, we have to look at the other contenders, because the evidence is about to get even more complicated. Was it a lunch wagon in Connecticut? Or a family in Texas? The battle for the burger's soul is just getting started. But wait, New England wants a word. If you travel to New Haven, Connecticut, you'll find a tiny brick building that looks like it was squeezed between 2 larger structures by a giant. This is Louis' Lunch, and according to the Library of Congress, this is the official birthplace of the hamburger. The year was 1900. As the story goes, a local businessman rushed into Louis Lasson's lunch wagon and pleaded, "Louis, I'm in a rush. Slap a meat puck between 2 planks and let me go." Louis took some steak trimmings, ground them up, grilled them in a vertical cast iron broiler, which they still use today, by the way, and served it between 2 slices of toast. Notice I said toast, not a bun. To this day, Louis' Lunch refuses to serve ketchup or mustard. They say if the meat is good, you don't need to hide it. But if we head south to Texas, the story takes a turn toward the legendary Old Dave. Fletcher Davis of Athens, Texas, is claimed by many, including food historian Frank X. Tolbert, to have been serving fried ground beef patties on home-baked bread as early as the 1880s. But the real kicker? Many believe Old Dave was the one who actually introduced the burger to the world at the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair. A reporter for the New York Tribune wrote about a hamburger sold at a stand on the pike, calling it the innovation of a food connoisseur. Then there's the Oklahoma claim. In 1891, Oscar Weber Bilby of Tulsa allegedly took his wife Fanny's homemade yeast buns, not toast, not sliced bread, but actual buns, and filled them with hickory-grilled ground beef. His family claims this was the first true hamburger because it used a specifically designed bun. They even have a governor's proclamation to prove it. So, why are there so many claims? Why does everyone want a piece of the burger's birthright? The truth is, The late 19th century was a period of frantic industrialization. People were moving to cities, working in factories, and they needed food that was cheap, fast, and portable. The invention of the hamburger wasn't a single eureka moment in a lab. It was a collective response to a changing world. It was in the air. Despite these localized claims, the hamburger had a massive image problem in the early 1900s. It was seen as low-class food. People associated ground meat with the terrifying descriptions in Upton Sinclair's Times, the jungle times, scraps, fillers, and unsanitary conditions. To the average American, a hamburger was something you bought from a dirty cart behind a circus tent, and you'd probably regret it by morning. The man who changed everything was Billy Ingram. In 1921, he teamed up with Walter Anderson to start White Castle in Wichita, Kansas. They didn't just sell burgers, they sold purity. They painted the buildings white, used stainless steel, and most importantly, they ground the meat right in front of the customers. They turned the hamburger from a suspicious puck into a standardized industrial marvel. They invented the system. By the time the 1940s rolled around, the car culture of Southern California took the burger to its final form. Brothers Richard and Maurice McDonald realized that people didn't want to wait. They applied Henry Ford's assembly line logic to the kitchen. This was the speedy service system. No more silver service, no more long waits, just a 15-cent burger wrapped in paper, delivered in seconds. This was the moment the hamburger conquered the globe. It ceased to be a German steak or a Texas fair food. It became the ultimate symbol of American efficiency. Today, the hamburger is a culinary chameleon. You can find it for $1 at a drive-thru, or for $5,000 covered in gold leaf and truffles in Las Vegas. It has been adapted into the rice burger in Japan, the paneer burger in India, and the beetroot burger in Australia. So, who really invented it? The answer is, we all did. The German sailors provided the name and the raw concept. The 19th century fair vendors provided the portability. The industrial pioneers provided the safety and the speed. And you, the consumer, provided the demand that turned a simple meat sandwich into a multi-billion-dollar cultural icon. The next time you take a bite of a juicy cheeseburger, you aren't just eating a meal. You're eating a piece of history that spans from the Mongol Empire to the shores of Hamburg, from the dusty fairgrounds of Wisconsin to the neon lights of California. It is a story of migration, innovation, and the universal human desire for a hot, delicious meal on the go. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the greasy, glorious history of the burger, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for more Untold food origins. We've got a whole series coming up on the secret history of pizza and the dark truth behind chocolate. What's the best burger you've ever had? Was it a fancy gastropub creation or a smashed patty from a hole-in-the-wall diner? Let's settle the debate in the comments below. And if you have a suggestion for the next food we should investigate, let us know. Thanks for watching. And remember, the best stories are the ones that are still sizzling.